So for the visual learning, you guys were asked, what are some other ways to represent 1, 2, and 3 holes with fractions? How many fourths are in 1 hole, 2 holes, and 3 holes? So unlike the solve and share problem where you had 2 circles, 2 whole circles to represent the 2 whole pies, now we have a number line and we have a visual model or an area model. And so when you look at these, they're a little bit different than what we've seen before. So instead of a number line labeled 0 to 1, we also have 2 and 3. And above that, with our area models, we have 1 hole, 2 holes, 3 holes. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and just color code these holes so that you can see the difference in them. So you can kind of tell where one starts and where one begins because it's a little bit difficult. And then hole 2. And so as I'm doing this, you'll notice that each of these holes is partitioned into 4 equal parts or fourths. And that's very important because when we go to label those fractions, the denominator for every single one of them is going to be 4 because that's how many equal parts are in each of these 3 holes. So let's first look at the first hole and the one in green. And because this first hole is partitioned into 4 equal parts, my denominator, like I said earlier, is going to be 4. So starting at 0, we have 0 fourths. Then we have 1 fourth, 2 fourths, 3 fourths. And at that 1 hole, we have 4 fourths. Remember, when your numerator and your denominator are the same number, it always equals 1 whole. And we're going to do the same thing up here. So even though the area model, we write the fractions inside the pieces, it still represents the same amount as the number line. So at 1 whole, our fraction is 4 fourths. Moving on to our second whole. So again, 4 equal parts, our denominator is not changing. But if we've already counted all the parts from the first whole, we're just going to continue on. So after 4 fourths, we have 5 fourths, 6 fourths, 7 fourths, and then 8 fourths at the 2 hole mark. Same thing up here. We have 5 fourths, 6 fourths, 7 fourths, and 8 fourths. So at this point, at 2 holes, if I've eaten one, if I'm looking at 1 and 2 holes together, that's 8 fourths all together in 2 of those holes. Okay. And then finally, moving on to our last hole, our third hole, also partitioned into 4 equal parts. So our denominator is not changing. We've already counted all of these 8 pieces. And so moving on, we have, when we start down here, we have 9 fourths, 10 fourths, 11 fourths, and then 12 fourths. Same thing up here. We have 9 fourths, 10 fourths, 11 fourths, and finally we have 12 fourths. So down here, I'm going to write down 12 fourths. Okay. And that is how we would represent how many fourths are in 1 hole, 2 holes, and 3 holes.